Great, thanks, Craig. Hi, everyone. My name is Ross. I hope you can hear me okay. Basically, I'll give you guys a quick rundown of kind of my history in terms of social media. Basically, I've been playing with this stuff before it was actually called social media. Back in university, I started up my very first blog, and it was all focused around fantasy football. And I'll talk about football a little bit later on, but it's truly a passion, or some would say an obsession of mine. I ran this blog for probably about a year or two, and I was able to generate a lot of traction. I was getting contacted from The Score, from SportingNews.com, quite a few big players. But over time, as the views went up, the marks went down. So my mom kind of put a axe to that very quickly, and that was kind of my initial introduction to social media, but also where I kind of realized that this thing is something that's going to take off in the next few years and will present people with a lot of great opportunities. From there, I joined CBC, where I was able to implement the social media strategy across all of the maritime provinces, including PEI, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, and right here in Nova Scotia. From there, I joined Color, a local advertising agency here in Halifax, and I've been here for about 2 years consulting companies on how they can use social media and digital marketing to really achieve their business goals and objectives. Um, and from there, it's kind of been history ever since. What we're going to be talking about today is really a 101 on social media and how you can kind of lay that foundation to get started. So, again, welcome everyone. This is the first of our 3 week seminar sessions. We'll be talking about a variety of different topics over the next few weeks. Primarily, it will be focused on social media, but we do have a few sessions that dive in deeply into things like SEO, which is more focused around the digital marketing aspect. We've got some great stuff lined up for the next few weeks. I've got a handful of new content for some of the people who may have been on some of the in-person sessions held over the last few months. And I think it's also important to note that all the audio, slides, and a few documents will also be available for download once the session is over. And that's just the legal kind of aspect of it to let you guys know that this will be recorded. So let's get started. Before we do, anyone on the phone, I heard a couple beeps when you sign in. Just be sure to press *6 to make sure that your phone is muted. All right. So our first class is really going to be focused around setting this framework for your own digital and social media strategies. The majority of the examples and case studies that we'll be talking about will be related to the tourism industry, but at the same time, a lot of the concepts and approaches to marketing can be applied to any business. This session in particular is going to be focused on highlighting the key pieces that need to be in place as the foundation for you to move forward and really achieve those business goals and objectives that you have established for yourself. Beyond that, it's kind of meant to provide you with a few key insights that you can take and use as the foundation, so you can take your brand to the next level. Ideally, it's going to be primarily focused around kind of an introduction to social media, and really set that framework up for anyone who's looking to kind of develop a game plan when they're looking to find social media success, because that's really what it's all about. We're all trying to find out what is it that I can do to allow me and my business to find success. So yesterday was a big deal. Not sure if there's any football fans in the house, but yesterday was the first Sunday of the NFL being back on. And I'm a huge football fan. I've been playing fantasy football for many years. I've been obsessed with the Philadelphia Eagles for many years. I'm a true football freak, so to speak. Yesterday was the first game of the NFL season, and while I was sitting there watching the games, it got me thinking about what a team goes through to become better than everyone else. What a team would go through to become a true success. What makes the Patriots or the Colts so successful? Well, the Colts a few years ago, maybe not this year, but that's a different topic. My favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles, has disappointed year after year and has never won a championship. So if there's any Leaf fans in the house, I can feel your pain. And it can take a toll on you as you expect your team to do the right things and make the right moves, but for some reason, some things holds them back from actually reaching that success. And what I've realized is that The series of events that take place for a football team, a basketball team, or any type of sports team to find success is very related to the series of events that happens when businesses, organizations, companies are trying to find success in social media. We all want to do the right thing for our businesses, but sometimes the unexplainable tends to hold us back from kind of reaching that ultimate goal of success. If you've heard my talks before, you'll remember how excited some people get after talking about all the new approaches they can take with Facebook, with Twitter, with Foursquare, with Pinterest. They get all excited to see all of these new opportunities, but somewhere along the way, the there's a disconnect. It doesn't actually happen. Things start to get in the way. Business as usual tends to get in the way, and we ultimately step back and we never actually implement those approaches. What my hope is today is to kind of set that framework where you can identify kind of some of those key opportunities that exist in social media and then take them and leverage them to allow yourself to reach that full success. At the end of this 3-week program, I hope that you guys have kind of learned a few key insights and tips and tricks of the trade that you can actually truly implement for your business within days, within hours. Until then, we can dive into this epiphany that I had around social media success and how it relates to businesses. So, how does it kind of relate? How does the process to become super successful in sports translate to becoming super successful in social media? Well, it all starts with a goal. And this is the tricky part, because what you don't realize is a lot of teams don't necessarily set their sights on the same goal. Some teams look at a season when they're not necessarily in a great position and they say, this is just a rebuilding year. We don't have to win it all. We just need to do okay. The great teams, however, the ones who are constantly successful, always aim for that championship. That's all they see. They don't see anything else. They only see their end goal as being in the Stanley Cup, being in the World Series. They see the championship game this year as being their goal year after year. When Sidney Crosby signed to the Penguins, he didn't just want to make the playoffs. He wanted to win a championship. Whether he won the MVP or not, that was all secondary. And sure, it's an indicator that he was getting closer to his goal, but it wasn't his end goal. And that's how we need to think about business. That's how we need to think about our social media strategies. What is your end goal? Are you looking to drive new sales? Are you simply a new business? Have you just launched a bed and breakfast? Not a lot of people know who you are. You're still new to the market. And is your goal solely to focus around generating awareness for your business? If that's your approach, if that's the goal, then that's what you need to focus on. You need to focus on generating more buzz for your business and getting people talking about your brand. If you're managing a large hotel and people generally right now don't find your customer service to be that great, if that's something that you've identified as a goal, that you want to improve your customer service, then that should lead everything that you do from a social media perspective. When you start to use Twitter, you have to think about, okay, so what ways can I use Twitter to improve my customer service? Is this tweet going to allow me to become better at serving my customers? And if you're taking an awareness approach, what content can you create? What stories can you tell that will allow your brand to truly shine and spark that buzz? So how do you do that? How do you kind of achieve these goals that you have set for yourself when you have established kind of where you want to be, where you want to go, where you want to take this brand? How do you achieve it? The way that you do that is by developing a strategy. And this is really what a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about over the next 3 weeks is going to be focused around. It's going to be focused around what you can do within your strategy to find success. If you're on the phones here and you are dialed in, would you be able to press *6 just to mute your phone? That would be great.
Also, we're seeing some chats that the audio pieces on the computer is breaking up. So I would encourage people to call in if indeed you're only getting parts of the conversation. You'll have a much more fulfilling experience. So call in again using those phone numbers and passcodes And again, star 6 to mute your line. Sorry, Ross.
No problem. Okay. Thank you for the heads up. I will we will work through that. So thank you for the heads up. Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to keep going along. The next step, when you're looking to kind of develop this strategy, this is really where a lot of companies fall short. Because to develop a strategy that is sound and will generate true results, you need to do a lot of thinking. You have to analyze the ins and outs of your industry, you have to look at the competition, and you have to link everything back to your business goals and objectives. And that's the same way that it would work in sports. For organizations who are successful in football, they need to look at their competition, look at the people who are in their division, and develop a strategy that will allow them to find success. So, whether that's deciding, okay, we're going to run the ball constantly, or we're going to pass the ball constantly, whatever strategy you develop and whatever strategy the coach thinks will allow them to best achieve their goals, that's what they have to run with. You're the coach. You are the coach for your team, for your brand, for your business. And what you need to do is identify, based off research, understanding social media as a whole, you need to take that knowledge and develop a strategy that will work best for you. So if you're looking to use social media to educate consumers on your project, on your product, what is going to be the best strategy for you? Maybe you're going to use Facebook to solely push out announcements and update customers on what's happening in your restaurant or happening at your business. Maybe you're going to use it to solely educate consumers rather than have that ongoing discussion where it's all focused around engagement. This is an approach that several shops use and they find great success from. But others take a deeper approach where they actually focus on driving that engagement, where they focus on sparking conversations between them and the consumer, and not just waiting for the consumers to come to them. So it's more of an outbound approach rather than inbound, and it's a place where you have to really develop a strategy that works best for you. There's no cookie cutter approach to developing a strategy. So what you need to do is look at your business, recognize your industry, and then get a grip on what your strategy is going to be and what channels need to be lined up to allow you to find that success. Because the channels are kind of like the players that you would put on your team. In football, you need a quarterback, a running back, you need the defense, you need your offense. But what really differentiates one team from the next is the player's skill, their approach, their style. So what you need to do when you're identifying, okay, we want to be on Facebook and we want to be on LinkedIn, when you're identifying these things, you need to start thinking about, okay, how are we going to find success through these channels? How well can I do social media? If you really think that, okay, Facebook is where the majority of our target market is, and this is where we need to put our dollars and really focus, then that's what you need to do. You need to use the channels that you know you can do very well. A good friend of mine always said that his dad would say to him, it's better to have one good kid than two bad. So that's the way that you need to look at your ingredients when you're trying to find your right players for your team. Do you have time to engage on a regular basis using Twitter? If you don't, then it's probably not worth putting your time and effort into it. Do you have the ability to dive deep into LinkedIn and make those business relationships? If so, then that's where you need to spend your time. That's where you need to focus. Um, and once you've done that, once you've identified the right team, the right ingredients that will allow you to find success, then it's time to actually implement and bring those things to life. So that's kind of the ingredients that allow you to find that success. And it's really depending on you. I don't want everyone to leave these sessions and say, okay, I need to start diving into blogging. I need to start diving into Facebook, into Twitter, into YouTube, all of these different things. Don't do it. As soon as you do that, it'll become like trying to drink out of a fire hydrant. It's just too overwhelming. What you need to do is just find a few key stars, find a few key players, few key channels that you can use and find success, and then bring them to life. That's how you can find success through your brands. So once you've done that, the only way that you can get better is to practice. The only way that you can take your social media efforts to the next level is to constantly put in the hours, put in the effort to actually to find that success. If you want to generate growth, if you want to increase awareness, you have to get into this thing and get messy. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to stumble a few times. What you have to recognize is that social media, if it was a person, it wouldn't even have its first kiss yet. This thing is still relatively new. You have a chance to differentiate yourself, and the only way to do that is by stepping up to the plate and really diving in. Um, millions of companies are still trying to understand social media. It's the ones who don't have a strategy or the ones who don't have a goal that fail. That's why this is what I start with when I give this presentation, because you need to recognize your strategy and your goal first. And then from there, you're able to dive in and really find that success that we're talking about. The only way that you will truly find success is if you get in there and you get messy. You have to self educate yourself. You can go to conferences, you can jump on webinars, but the best lessons that you'll learn in social media is through actually trying it out. It's actually diving in, getting messy, and putting this thing to work. That's the only way that you can really differentiate yourself from the other brands, because a lot of people do think that they can do social media simply by reading about it. I'm here to tell you that you need to actually put in the work and put in the effort if you want to see results come from social media. People think one of the biggest misconceptions about social media is that it's free. Social media is definitely not free. It costs time. If you're willing to put in the time and effort to find success, then that's exactly what you will get. You will find success if you're willing to put in the time and actually practice, because that's really what will differentiate you from everyone else. So, if I was to ask the question, what is social media? A lot of people would throw out a variety of different things. Some people would say social media is Twitter. Some people would say social media is Facebook. I was reading something online the other day, and someone described social media as being a group of internet based applications built on ideology and technology and psychology. All at the end of the day, guys, people are trying to overcomplicate something that is very simple. Social media, in a nutshell, is just conversations happening online. It's simply a shift in the way that people communicate with one another. It is a fundamental shift, however, in the way that societies today operates. Um, it's conversations happening online. Everybody remembers. There's some of you might be able to remember when they had those things called party lines, where you would pick up the phone and there would be a bunch of people from your city on the line. That's basically all this is. It's a conversation happening online between hundreds and thousands and millions of people on a regular basis. This concept of communication has really changed the way that brands need to communicate with one another. It has changed the way that brands have to communicate with consumers, and it's a great thing. I mean, my dad always talked about how when he was growing up, you didn't go to a barber shop because they had the biggest ad budget, because they were putting up the biggest billboards. You went to a barber shop because you felt you had a relationship with the consumer, with the brand. And I think that that's what social media is taking us back to. It's taking you back to a place where brands can truly feel connected to their consumers, to their customers. And the conversations that are happening online, guys, the conversations happening about you. And this is why it gets scary, because people are afraid to have their brands being out there talked about and not being able to influence that conversation. But that's the thing. You need to recognize that you cannot control this conversation, but you can influence it. That's the difference. A lot of people think, okay, we need to shut down Facebook. We need to block everyone from our wall. We need to figure out a way to get rid of conversations happening on TripAdvisor because there's a few negative reviews up there. That's not the approach you need to take. The approach that you need to take is look at how can we influence this conversation to go from being a negative sentiment to a positive sentiment. How can we use social media to develop more powerful relationships with our customers? How can we embrace this new framework of conversation to allow people to act as marketers for us? I mean, if you can inspire people to tell your story on your behalf, then you'll find success. So, a few interesting stats about social media. Here's one: 36% of posted content is on social media is about a brand. So people are talking about you. They want to talk about you. They interact with brands every single day. All of us go through a day and we interact with more than 100 brands. Um, and as we go through that, we tend to share our conversations about them, whether it's a great customer service experience that we had at a restaurant, or whether it's a new shirt that we bought. We take a picture of it and we share it on Instagram or on Twitter. People are much more likely to share content about a brand than a brand is to you have a better chance of success if you can inspire people to talk about your brand than to force them to share your content. So what you need to do is recognize that they are talking about you. So you have to develop a place and a space that allows them to want to share your stories. The average Facebook session lasts 37 minutes. Twitter, 23, and there are more than 400 million people who use Facebook daily. These numbers are mind blowing. 37 minutes a day on Facebook is pretty crazy. I mean, if you think about that, the average 400 million people are visiting Facebook a day. If you multiply that by 37 minutes, that's a lot of time. And some people are probably thinking that's a lot of wasted time. But at the end of the day, this is where things are going. People are using Facebook as a place to stay connected, for a place to share content, to communicate with one another, to stay up on news, and to ultimately talk about your business. So for you not to be there, you're missing out on a key opportunity to take your brand to the next level. Facebook isn't going anywhere. Social media is not a fad. Facebook might be gone in 10 years, sure. Twitter might be gone in 10 years as well. But at the end of the day, this shift in terms of communication happening from being in person to online is here to stay. So, what we need to do is recognize that and then embrace it. I'm sure none of you didn't know what Facebook was before you got on this call. Everyone knows about Facebook. And if you haven't seen the movie The Social Network, I highly recommend it, just as a side note. Great movie. But awareness of Facebook is close to 100%. People around the world know about Facebook. Everyone's talking about it. It is the king of social networks. And for that reason, it's definitely one of those channels where I always recommend, okay, if you're looking for that one channel on social media to look at and one channel to really utilize to achieve those business goals and objectives, Facebook might be the one. 50% of social network users are connected to brands. That means more than 50% of people who use Facebook, use Twitter, are connected to you, want to be connected to you. They're liking your brand pages. They're writing reviews about you on TripAdvisor or Yelp. They're checking into your businesses on Foursquare. More than 50% of people are looking to be connected to brands online. So it's just telling that story of why it's important to be there. From there, 55% of people aged 45 to 54 have a profile on a social networking site. And I always get this question around, is social media still just for the young kids? Is it still just for the 25-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, the students? Not even close. The fastest growing demographic right now is actually women above the age of 45. And they spend a lot of time on social media because they've already understood the importance of being social. Women in general just understand the importance of being social better than us guys do. And because of that, they're embracing social media and they're doing it extremely well. They use social media to stay connected to their kids, to stay connected with their friends. When their kids have flown the nest, they use it to keep in touch. Social media is no longer just a buzzword that describes kind of this thing that the kids are doing. It is definitely a shift in the way that humans communicate with one another, and it's how we stay up on the news. When something happens, it typically leaks online before it does through traditional media. And that's why people are using it, because it's providing that fast, relevant content, and it's no longer being used just by the students. So, from a tourism perspective, these are two stats that I think really speak to why social media is extremely important in the tourism industry. On their own, the stats speak numbers. I mean, 87% of people say that online reviews impact the accommodation choice. So when they're about to take a trip, they're looking at TripAdvisor, they're looking at Yelp, they're doing careful analysis of reviews to see what other consumers are saying, because people trust people. They're much less likely to trust a brand. So what we need to do as marketers and as business owners is to ensure that when they come to TripAdvisor, when they're reading these reviews about our business, that they're reading reviews that tell our story, and they tell a consistent story with the truth. Um, I think on 2 weeks from now, we'll be running a session on TripAdvisor, and we'll really dive into kind of how you can ensure that your perception, the perception that you're giving off from TripAdvisor, is a positive one. So we'll definitely be diving into that a little bit deeper. From there, 70% of people trust online reviews over ads. It really just speaks to the shift in terms of how much consumers actually trust brands. They're less likely to trust you over their friends, over their consumers. So what we need to do is ensure that the story that we're telling on social media is able to be shared rather quickly. And the only way that it can be shared is if the story is actually happening. So if you're not on social media, if you're not using Facebook, if you're not using Twitter, there's a less likely chance that somebody will tell the story for you, because you're not going to be top of mind. Somebody who is top of mind, who is providing that interesting, relevant content, is much more likely to have their story shared than somebody who sits back and simply runs a lot of advertisements all the time. So what we need to do is look at these stats and recognize, yes, social media has definitely played a significant impact on the tourism industry, and we need to use it to really find a way to achieve our business goals and objectives. And as you see, it's always tied back to that. It's tied back to those business goals and objectives that you need to have in place for you to find success. If you do not have those goals, if you do not have those objectives, you're playing with social media just for the fun of it. What you really need to do is do everything on social media for those goals. A lot of people get on Facebook and then they end up playing Farmville. That's not the way that this works. You need to jump on Facebook and build out a strategy for your content plan. Identify what you need to be putting out there to achieve those business goals and objectives. Because at the end of the day, guys, in today's world, ignoring social media is like ignoring Google back in 1999. It still presents a great opportunity for businesses. But like Google and the whole movement of search engine optimization and all of that stuff, it's a train that is about to leave the station. We've talked about the foundation of social media. We understand marketing 101. If you recognize through this last 30 minutes of conversation, you will have noticed that really what we're talking about is still business as usual. There isn't a significant change. The only difference is the channel in which that communication with the customer is happening on. So what you need to do is take that foundation that we talked about, developing that goal, then from there identifying a strategy and the right channels that will allow you to bring that strategy to life. Once you can identify those, you're in a good spot. Today, what I want to look at is how can you do that better? How can you really tell your story through social media better? The best way to do that is to start by understanding those fundamentals, the fundamentals of marketing 101, and then combining that with the fundamentals of creating a great story and sharing it on social media. Because social media isn't a fad. It's here to stay. It's definitely something that is going to continue to simply increase in terms of the amount of trust and the relevance that it has to marketing communications. Our brands and our businesses need to recognize that social media is not something that is just going to go away in a few months. It's something that presents us with a great opportunity to find business success, especially for small businesses, because it doesn't cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to use social media. All it costs is your time. If you're willing to put in the time, if you're willing to put in the effort, you can find success through social media. And that's really all it costs. It costs time. So when you're using social media, the most important thing is to really tell a cohesive story. A lot of people use social media and they're not really sure of what to talk about. For me, I find it very important for you to identify that story before you jump in. If you think about for yourself, for example, over the last few weeks, last few months, or last year, if I asked you to think about a short story or a childhood bedtime story, a joke, a story that you heard in a presentation, whatever. If I told you to think about that, it would be extremely easy to think of. I'm sure you're thinking of a story that might have happened this weekend or last week. It's very easy to think about a story. But if I asked you to think of a few mind blowing statistics that you've heard in the last few weeks, it's not as easy. It's a 9 times out of 10, it's easier to think about a story than it is to think of a stat because stories are sticky. Stories stick with us. I told this story at the beginning of the presentation all about football and how the concept of football applied to social media works. It's a story, and it's a story that will stick. It's a story that people can grasp because I didn't just say you need your goals, you need your strategy, and you need to have tactics. It's a story that sticks because it's told in a story. So why am I telling you this? Why am I telling you the importance of a story? It's because I believe that every marketing strategy should be built around telling an impactful story. That's how you can find success. Consumers in this digital online world are drowning in information. A good story, however, a story that is compelling, that is interesting, that is relevant, will allow you and allow your brand to cut through the noise. Social media is a very cluttered place. I mean, you can go on Twitter or you can go on your own personal Facebooks, and you'll see in your newsfeed the amount of garbage that you have to filter through. Status updates that have zero relevance, tweets that are about people's coffee, about their cats, about their dogs, and more than likely than not, it's more content about their cats again. But what people really want are stories that are about things that are relevant to their way of thinking, things that are interesting to them. Sure, the facts and the stats are always great, mind blowing figures, and they always give you that aha moment, but they're not going to stick. You can tell me over and over again that you're the best hotel in the world, but anyone can say that. What makes you different? What is it about your brand? What is it about your organization that truly differentiates you from everyone else? If you can tell me a personal story that feels real rather than some abstract concept, I'll feel more connected to you. That's what Apple has done with their brand. They told this story about thinking differently. They told the story of why it's important to think differently. That was their key focus leading up until recently when Steve Jobs passed away. But before that, their main focus was always about think differently, be an innovator. They never talked about their product. So if you can develop for yourself a story, something that you stand for, something that your business stands for, you'll be able to find success through social media because somebody is more likely to share a story than they are to share a stat. Because as you saw in the stat before, in the figure before, people are very unlikely to trust an advertisement. And in advertisements, we're more likely to say, we're the number 2 rated restaurant in the Maritimes. Saying that provides me with no type of real personal concept that I can latch onto. People forget facts, but they remember stories. And if you can tell a story that is compelling, consumers will feel as if they have a relationship with your brand. And if they have that relationship with their brand, it'll lead to word of mouth. And that's the key. With social media, it's like word of mouth on steroids. So if you're able to tell a compelling story, that story is going to be spread very quickly. And the press loves a great story. I mean, if you can make their job easier, you can get coverage. When I was working at CBC, I realized this, that the brands and the marketers who came to us with stories were the ones who generated the most coverage. They were the ones who we talked about. They were the ones who were on Live at 5. It was because they had a compelling and dynamic story. And anyone can tell a story, guys. You don't need to have a huge organization to tell one. You can be a single sole proprietorship, you can be an entrepreneur, or you can be a huge multi corporation. Today, I'm hoping that you can see how easy it is to tell a story, how easy it is for you to develop a concept that will allow you to find success and truly build those relationships with your customers. Because success in business is based on how successful we form relationships. If we can develop true relationships with our customers, we'll find success. And the only way that we can do that is if we communicate well. We need to communicate with our customers in a way that allows them to feel connected with us so they can feel connected to our brands. And the only way to do that is to think outside of the box. You have to be creative. You have to start making decisions that will initially make you kind of feel a little bit weird. But if at the end of the day, if the approach that you're taking with your marketing makes you feel weird and makes you kind of feel off, that's when you'll start to get the most reward. The other day, I was working on an engagement piece, and the brand just wanted to generate some engagement very quickly and awareness on Facebook. So to do this, they recognized that Facebook was where the majority of their market was. They had a small following, and they needed to do something creative and unique to kind of show that they also thought differently. But they wanted to generate a little bit of traction. So what we did was we found a lottery ticket. We bought a lottery ticket, we scanned it, we put their branding all around the ticket, and we said, press the like button, and if we win, we'll share the winnings with you. Of course, they didn't win, but they got tons and tons of likes because people wanted to share the winnings if they did actually win. So what happened was they were able to generate tons and tons of traction. People were sharing their content on Twitter, people were sharing it on Facebook, clearly. The numbers went through the roof, and it was all because they thought outside of the box. They recognized that consumers, everybody wants to win $1 million. So by pressing a like button, it's an easy gesture, and people are willing to do it. So what can you do? What can you do to make your brand more popular? Well, if your product isn't cool, guys, your story can be. I always love this example. It's a hotel out of, I think it's out of Germany, and it's called the worst hotel in the world. So the story behind this hotel is that it was about to go out of business. It was receiving negative, beyond negative reviews on TripAdvisor. It was the worst hotel, literally, in the world. And what they did was they recognized, hey, there's nothing that we can do. We are about to go under. We need to think differently. We need to do something else. So what they did was they actually embraced it. They took this concept of being the worst hotel in the world and they promoted it. They actually embraced this concept and they launched with tons of creative on Facebook promoting it. So some of the images that they put out there, they show a picture of you when you check into the hotel and you look like a normal guy. But when you check out, you have infections in your nose, your eyes are swelled up, your hair looks like it might have lice in it. It promotes this fact that they're the worst hotel in the world. And then in terms of a few other ads, they also had a accidentally eco-friendly. So their eco elevator basically allows you to have to jump up a few stairs because the stairs are broken. Their eco towel is the curtain. So they don't give you towels. You have to use a curtain to dry off. This was their way of thinking outside of the box. And what happened because of it was mind blowing. A lot of people think, why would anybody want to stay at the worst hotel in the world? Well, the reason why someone would want to stay at the worst hotel in the world is because they want to tell that story with their friends. They want to be able to say to their friends, hey, I just stayed at the worst hotel in the world. And of course, the friend would be like, oh, yeah, I'm sure you did. No, really, I stayed at the worst hotel in the world. Um, their occupancy went up 80%. So they're still in business till this day, all because they embrace this concept of being the worst hotel in the world. They were able to generate tons of traction. They went viral. Media covered them. Um, Facebook. They were just being spread on a regular basis because they were telling a compelling story. And social media acts as a place where people can share their stories. I mean, you think about it, there's going to be people who would stay here and they'd take pictures with their mobile phones and they'd share that content on Twitter. They'd check in on Facebook. They'd Instagram photos of the bed, of the eco-friendly towel, for example. They'd share all of this content because they would want to share this story with their friends. A less extreme story is this restaurant here that I found when I was in Europe last summer. I did a quick search on my cell phone, Foursquare, and I went to try to find somewhere where we could eat, and this place showed up. It's called Brasserie 66. So I did this search, and after a little bit of digging, I found out that this company positions themselves as someone who embraces the digital lifestyle. So what does that mean? Basically, the way that this company works is they embrace all things social media. So they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're on Foursquare, and what they do is they give deals out to people who check in using those channels. So if you tweet at them, you can get a discount. When you come in to their actual restaurant, if you check in, you have an opportunity to become the mayor on Foursquare, for example. They use Pinterest to pin all of these things. So basically, at the end of the day, their story is that one, they provide great quality food, but two, and the story that really sticks is the concept of embracing this digital lifestyle. As you can see in this image, they've got their menu embedded directly into Facebook just to further show how much emphasis they place on embracing this digital lifestyle. They were able to see an increase. I found a case study on them. Increase in positive reviews by 400% when they started to place a lot of emphasis into their digital marketing budget, when they started to use Facebook as less of a channel for consumers to kind of just check them out and more of a place where they could connect with their consumers and develop that real relationship. Another interesting story that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about is Coney 2012. So Coney 2012 is a story that was the most viral video in YouTube history. At the time of this screenshot, it had 86 million views. I think right now it's at close to 100. It went viral very quickly. And the reason why it went viral was because it told a story. Everybody heard of the stories of how there's horrible things happening in Africa about child soldiers and things like that, war crimes, all those things. These are stories that have been told for centuries. We've all heard these stories. But what the people did when they created this video is they made a more emotional story. We've all heard the stories of, oh, 1 in 3 kids in Africa don't have a mother. We've heard those stories, and it's very fact based. But what these guys did was they told an emotional story. So they made a comparison between a regular old North American kid with a kid who lived in Africa, and they showed the difference in what they will see by the time that they hit 15. The difference in the way that they live, in the way that they have relationships with their community, about the trials, the tribulations that they go through. It didn't tell pure facts. It told an emotional story, and because of that, it went viral. It went. I think it was a video that was close to 30 minutes long, but it still was able to receive over 86 million views simply because it told a compelling story. Fascinating stories spread. And the Coney video is just one of those examples of one of those fascinating stories that people want to share. So in recognizing the importance of storytelling, you have to think about how can you use storytelling to tell the story of your brand. David Ogilvy, a famous advertising guy, once said, "No one ever sold anybody anything by boring them to death." Do not be boring. Do not tell a story that is not worth sharing. You want to tell a story that is worth pressing that share button, worth pressing that like button. You want people to feel inspired and empowered to want to tell your story. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to being a consumer, there's only two things they care about. They care about how cool you are as a brand, and they care about how cool you make them look. And when I say cool, I'm not talking in terms of the hipster and fun and backwards hat kind of cool. I'm talking about their own personal beliefs. So if I'm interested in, I don't know, archaeology, and I'm obsessed with it, if that's what you do and you're telling the story about it, I'm going to find you very cool. If I'm interested in the digital lifestyle and that's what you focus on and that's what you're all about, I'm going to find that very cool. That's the stuff that we talk about in social media. That's what consumers talk about. That's what they care about. If you can make me feel cool, or if you're cool on your own, I'm going to talk about your brand. So, what you need to do is embrace that story that you can tell. And that's how you'll start to generate revenue through social media. You need to find that story, something that really differentiates you from the competition and is built on emotion rather than on facts. Once you do that, you're ready to start making money from social media. You really are. That's kind of the framework and the foundation that you need to find success. That's it. You basically need to identify your goals, tell a great story, and use a compelling, interesting strategy that will allow you to reach that final goal. But one thing that I really need to drive home, and one thing that a lot of brands and organizations, especially small businesses, miss out on, is the fact that you need to have a home base. You need to have somewhere where you can drive people to at the end of the day. This is where you control your story completely. This isn't TripAdvisor. This isn't Facebook. This is a place where you own the entire message. I'm sure a lot of you already have a website. That is your home base. This is the resting place for all of your content. This is where the opportunity really begins to exist, where you can differentiate your story from the competition. This is where you're able to showcase everything from testimonials, a blog, and your integration with social media. This is where the deal is closed. The average consumer will visit your website probably 5 times before they actually make a decision to buy from you. So, what you need to do is make sure that your home base is um, providing your consumers with a compelling, interesting story, a story that relates back to your brand and ultimately relates back to your goals and objectives. And if you can do that, you'll find success. Because your website does need to tell a story. These are two examples, and their stories that are being told through their website is very different. The Cosmopolitan, it's a Las Vegas hotel. You can see right in that first line, just the right amount of wrong. That on its own is telling a story. They're telling a story that this isn't the party hotel. This isn't somewhere where you go and you're doing keg stands and you're getting crazy. It's just the right amount of wrong. So it has a sense of class to it. Then we have the Roger Smith Hotel in New York. If you come to this, you immediately know that this is an artsy hotel. You know that when you get there, you're going to be embraced by an art culture. And they're two very different stories that are being told. Your website needs to tell a story. Your site needs to tell a story that you can drive back to. You use Twitter, you use Facebook, and all of these things, but at the end of the day, if this is where that sale happens, that's where you need to drive them back to. You need to inspire people to come back to this site to make that purchase. You need to inspire people to come here if they want to learn more information about your business, about your brand. Your website really does need to tell a compelling story. A lot of people say that, okay, how can I afford this? I'm a small business. I don't have a lot of money. I really don't have the funds in the budget to create a four-star quality website. I can't afford it. So what can you do? There's a lot of different options out there. There's one site here that I'm talking about called ThemeForest. So themeforest.net, I believe the URL is. It might be .com. Is a website that allows you to download templates that are beautiful. Amazing templates created by user experience designers. You can take one of these templates, you can put it up on your site, and you will have a website that is the quality of this one. And that's great. You can fully customize all of this content. That background image, you can put in your own. The navigation, you can customize the text, all of that stuff. Because, guys, first impressions matter, especially in social media. If I visit a site and it doesn't seem professional, if it's not up to quality, I'm probably going to look elsewhere. So that's one easy way that you can differentiate yourself, because I'm sure you have competition whose websites are horrendous. So what you can do is create a better website. So when somebody compares the two, they say, this company puts a lot of value into their first impression, into their home base. So that's where I'm going to go over these other guys. Because, hey, if they don't take care of this, how are they going to take care of me? So you definitely need to recognize that first impressions matter. They're very important. And there are cost-effective channels out there that you can use to really find them for a great price. Once you've done that, you need to also realize that the worst decision that you can make is try to do it on your own. If you have no experience in web design development, don't try to do it on your own. And don't just say, okay, I'll just get my son to build this thing, even though he has no experience in this thing. If you do that, you're going to end up with a site like these. You don't want to do that. These sites are, you come to a site like this and you just want to run away. Get help from a pro. There's a lot of cost-effective channels out there. Every city has freelancers, people who you can hire to actually build these websites and do them extremely well. You don't want to be stuck with a website looking like this, because no matter how great you're doing on social media, if you're driving people to something that looks like this, the story is not consistent. You need to have a consistent story across all channels, and this is the channel that it starts with. A lot of people ask the question, do I need a website? Why don't I just have Facebook? Well, think about what we were talking about earlier. Facebook could disappear 10 years from now. It could be gone. Um, Look at MySpace. Nobody's going to MySpace. Um, when it comes to Facebook, 10 years from now, it could be in a very similar situation. But one thing that consumer trends can never take away from you is your website. If you have this website, if you own your own voice on a channel, they can't take that away. This is where you tell your story and you put a lot of effort into it because you'll have it forever. So you want to make sure that your home base is at least up to par and doesn't look like these. From there, what you need to realize is that social media is not a one night stand. It's a relationship, guys. It's not something that you can just use once and then walk away. It doesn't work that way. It's something that really takes a true commitment. You have to put in the time, you have to put in the effort, and you need to do everything in your capacity to make it work. Um, Business hasn't changed. You need to focus on developing those relationships with your consumers. You need to put in the hours and put in the effort to constantly get better. And that's the only way that you'll get closer to achieving those business goals and objectives. But don't stress. We've got 3 weeks of webinars to go through. Um, and what you'll find is that at the end of the day, when it comes to marketing and when it comes to social media, the focus is still on the same things. We're still focusing on providing amazing customer service. We're still focused on a remarkable product and excellent value. Business as usual has not changed. If you have a great product, then you will be able to tell your story extremely well on social media. If you don't have a great product, then you need to improve it. It's simple as that. Social media cannot fix a problem that is happening in terms of your actual product or service just not being up to the par of your customers. It can improve your customer service abilities. It can improve the awareness. It can increase the amount of engagement that you have with customers, but it cannot improve your product on its own. You win by caring. If you put in the hours to show that you care about your customers and about social media as a whole, you'll find success. It's really that simple. If you put in the hours to actually bring this thing to life, you will find success through social media. And you'll be like Sid. You'll be able to sleep with your Stanley Cup. You'll find social media success, and no one will be able to hold you back. You just have to remember and keep in mind that framework that we talked about at the beginning. It's about identifying that goal. What is it that you're trying to achieve? I don't want everyone to jump off of this call and start tweeting and Facebooking and doing all of these things without understanding why are you there? Why are you using YouTube? Why are you using Twitter? I know that Pinterest has all the buzz, but what is it going to do for your business? If you can't identify that goal, that objective, then don't start choosing channels all willy-nilly. You need to find out what your goal is first, and then from there, develop a strategy that will go well with the channels that work best for you. And that's really how you can find that social media success. Because if you don't do that, if you're not finding a channel that you can use and do well, then you'll be in trouble. So that's the end of this session. Our next session is going to be on Facebook 101. We'll be following that up with Facebook talking primarily about revenue. From there, we'll get into SEO, then content creation, and then finally, we'll be wrapping it up with TripAdvisor best practices. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Thank you very much, Ross. For anybody who may have a question, feel free to use the chat window. Or if you have a verbal question, you can *6 and ask it if you find that easier. Ross, you must have done a fantastic job. I'm not seeing really any questions. I would like to thank you though, Ross. There was a lot of information there today. We hope that everybody was able to hear well. If this was your first one, I hope you understand that it's not a difficult process. If you liked what you saw, please let us know, because we're going to be sending a survey in your email very shortly. And also pass it on to other operators who you think may benefit from this. Also included in the email is the contact information for the technology resource people in your province. feel free to call. This is just an indication of the level of the level of service, I guess, that TT.com can bring to the industry. So please feel free to make contact and ask any questions. Again, our next session is on Wednesday, September 12th, Facebook 101. We look forward to seeing you all there. If you have not registered, please do so. And if there's no further questions, we'll just hang on the line just in case somebody does have something. But otherwise, thanks. Have a safe couple of days. I know we're all in for some terrible weather. So we hope that the stories aren't too bad on Wednesday. Thanks very much for your time and your patience.
So, Craig, I think I did see, excuse me, one question there. A question around what kind of stories can you tell during the off season? We'll get into this a lot deeper when we go into our content creation webinar. But some of the things that you want to think about when you're creating stories in the off season is talk about things that are top of mind. So, for example, a recent incident, it's kind of funny, was the Harry Prince Harry in Las Vegas. When that took place, there were tons of hotels that were in Las Vegas that started to create content that said, stay calm and do as Harry would do, or things like that. So they were playing on something that was very top of mind going on and was generating lots of buzz. So what we need to do as marketers is to focus on content that can be related to things that are happening right now. So what's going on that will get people talking. So, for example, yesterday, it was the kickoff for the first NFL Sunday game of the year. You create a story that says, hey, who's watching football this weekend? Who are you guys cheering for? You send out tweets like that. You send out status updates like that. Things that will get people talking. And while it's not directly related to your business, what it does is it will allow you to start building those relationships with your customers on a personal level. And that's when you really start to see some magic happen. Is there any other questions, Craig?
Ross, no, there's somebody that just asked in the content section, will you go through what makes a good, bad web page?
I think what we'll do is we'll be going through that on the SEO section.
Certainly, and that's part of the product offering of TourismTechnology.com, the one-on-one mentoring sessions. We sit down and we go through your website, and we evaluate the good, the bad, the ugly, and we make constructive criticisms to get you on the right track. So that's another opportunity.
That really goes towards what we do in our mentoring sessions.
Kelly and Jordan, what is Foursquare? Ross, would you like to address that?
Yeah, definitely. So Foursquare is a geolocation service, and basically what that means is it's kind of like a game. So people go from place to place, and they take their mobile device and they do this thing called checking in. And what a check-in is it means that I'm going to let all of my friends who are in my network know that I'm here. So by checking in at, say, Starbucks, all of my friends on Twitter or Facebook would see on Foursquare, it would read, Ross Simmons just checked in at Starbucks on Foursquare. So it's creepy to some people, but basically what it is it allows me to share with people updates on where I am physically. And that's really it. People check in so they can get points. The more times you go to the gym, for example, you get more points. If you go to a bar every weekend, you get points, things like that. So there's tons of different gamification that's kind of integrated with it, and that's really how it works.
Yeah, Kelly,
I think I also got a question.
Mayor of Starbucks in Halifax. He was a full year and never paid for coffee because he had the most number of check-ins.
Yeah, so one of the great things about Foursquare is if you check in a lot, you become this thing called the mayor. So at Starbucks, for example, what I've been able to do is because I checked in so much, whenever I go, I get a free coffee. So I see a few other questions here.
Yep, Julia was wondering what your thoughts are on connecting your Facebook status with your Twitter account.
So It's interesting. I don't think that you should connect them because, as Jamie said in the comment just there, the way that you communicate on each is very different. On Twitter, for example, you're going to have those at symbols in a lot of your conversations. So you don't want those showing up on Facebook. When it comes to Facebook, you often will do a status update that has 200 characters. And because it's 200 characters, the entire content won't be shared on Twitter because Twitter is limited to 140 characters or less. So you're going to cut yourself off in the middle of a sentence. So what I always recommend is that you go from one to the next, or you can check out a tool that we'll talk about later on called Hootsuite that allows you to easily connect to different channels. And I'll share that in the chat just so everyone can visit it.
Ron he said, I see the difference between getting on social media, establishing a Facebook and a Twitter account, and getting people to see your site. How do you get the message out? How do you go from passive to proactive mode?
Great question, Ron. This is definitely one of the more difficult things to do because, for the most part, when it comes to really generating that traction initially to kind of get that proactive approach happening, you do need to invest in things like online ads, um, or you can integrate it with actual physical in location. So there's kind of two approaches that I find uh, accomplish this the best. One, online ads on Facebook. They are relatively cheap, but you do need to be very targeted in the ads that you're running. So you need to target people specifically on location, education, their interests. It all depends on your business, but targeted ads can find great success on social media. From there, I think that it's very important to bring social to life in the real world. A lot of people solely focus on social media as its own channel rather than integrating it with that in-person experience. So when somebody comes up to you in your storefront, you need to have a call to action maybe on your on at your point of sale and say check us out on Facebook, or give people incentives to check you out on Facebook or share things on Facebook. Doing things like that will definitely allow you to start generating some traction online, and it all comes from that in person. So yeah, another approach is contesting, which we will talk about later on. Running contests always tends to get a spike in the amount of engagement that you have if you want to take a proactive approach. What you want to do if you're running a contest, however, is give away something that is relevant to your business and your target audience. If you run a B&B, don't give away an iPad because I'll like anyone for an iPad. But only a certain consumer is going to like your page or enter a contest if you're giving away something that your typical audience would find cool or relevant to them.
Okay, Ron, I hope that gave some insight into some of the way. Certainly, there's no magic bullet, I don't believe, when it comes to attracting people. As Ross may have said, everything comes at a cost, and a lot of times that cost is time.
I see that there's a Heather with her hand raised. I can't actually see your hand, of course, but it says has a raised hand. I'm not sure how to get her question.
Heather and Catherine both had their hand up for a while. I tried to message them, see if they were going to type. Excellent.
Perfect.
Thanks, Chris, for the hand clap.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Do we have any other questions? Still have a few minutes. Take advantage.
There's a question in the question and answer section.
I don't know why we're not seeing that, me or whoever it is. Let's see if we can. Oh man, look at that. Oh, seems like we have a lot of questions. Let's go back and find Destination Labrador, maybe the first one. As a tourism operator, if you make a mistake in a tweet or Facebook post, is it better to delete that post and make a new one or run a correction?
I think it depends on a few things. So for Facebook, for example, what you want to do on Facebook is see how many people saw it. So if you catch the mistake 10 minutes after, an hour after, I'd say delete it and then fix. If you had it up there for 5 days or so, let it be. If it's been 10 hours, maybe again, let it be and then just share a new status update. If people start to call you out on the mistake, I'm always a fan of responding and saying, thanks for the heads up. Make sure that they see that response, then deleting and then sharing the new content. On Twitter, what's interesting is it all happens in real time. So if you do send out a tweet and it's a mistake, people will have seen it one way or the other. So the best approach is to always follow up directly after that tweet and say, my apologies, here's a fix, that kind of thing. And don't worry so much about typos. I send out typos all the time, and basically I'll just delete the tweet and then send out a new one.
Okay. I don't know if Coastal Homes has had their question answered. They wanted to know what the website was and where to get the templates. Jamie, you may have pasted that link in there, or Ross, one of you.
Looks like Jamie is writing.
I think, well, let's go back to share. Oh, hang on.
Oh, themeforest.net. Yeah.
Delete. One with answer. Copy of the presentation.
Yep, so the copy of the presentation will be available after. If you guys want to email it, Ken, I'll send it over to you, Craig, and you can distribute it to the team, to everyone who was on the call.
Can you join two different Facebook pages together and make them one? And I'm assuming here we may have had two discrete businesses, or maybe there was a personal page and a fan page.
You can. So I had a URL. Let me find it. So basically, you can do it. If you go to Facebook itself, there's a way that you can actually merge pages. It should be under facebook.com/pages. What you might have to do, however, is contact Facebook specifically. And if you do take that approach, what you're going to find is that you need a certain amount of fans on each page to get that actual merge to happen. So I think they have a limit of 500 plus. If you don't have more than 500 likes, they won't merge them. But I can look into that a little bit more and speak to it next week during our Facebook talk.
Okay, Judy, I don't know if you're still there, Judy Peach. We would prefer, as opposed to you sending the registration email on to future delegates, that you send the registration link to them. That way we know who to expect and who we've had. So we do want all the word of mouth that we can, but we'd like for them to go register for the event just so we know who we're dealing with. Barry says, when we set up a Facebook page for our business, we had to add our personal account. This has not worked well. Can we create a business Facebook page? Now, maybe, Ross, that's something more we'll cover in Wednesday's session.
It is. We're going to cover that in detail during Wednesday's session. What you should keep in mind, Barry, is that if you create a Facebook page, there always needs to be a profile, which is a human page, associated with it. If what you're saying is that you created a business page as a person, so your business page gets added as a friend, then what you need to do is go to facebook.com/pages and update it so it's a business page and no longer a profile. Nope, there is no cost. I just sent a link that talks to how you can convert a personal page into a Facebook page. Yes, on Wednesday we'll be diving very deeply into Facebook. So there will be tons of content discussing everything you need to know about Facebook on Wednesday. And then following that, we have the 101 being followed by the 201, and that will happen next week. So we're going to get 2 sessions on Facebook because everyone knows how important it is. So you can definitely stay tuned for those.
Troy, I see your question there. Yes, we can certainly send information to all participants on the mentoring. you're interested in the mentoring, and I'm definitely interested in the Stan Rogers Folk Festival. So we'll certainly send that information out. Thanks for joining, Coastal Homes. You're not related to Mike Holmes by any chance, are you? Ross, I think the questions were over. You can bask in the glory of all the positive feedback.
Yeah, it looks that way.
Thanks,
Perfect.
everyone.
Well, thanks a lot, everyone. If you have any other questions and you want to flip me an email, my email's on the screen. I can make sure that I can incorporate that into our future sessions. And I'm also on Twitter if you have any questions and you want to flip me a tweet.
Hey,
Talk to
gang,
you
so
soon.
we'll see you all Wednesday, or we hope to see you all Wednesday. And again, I hope the next 2 days aren't too taxing on us all. Thanks very much for participating, and please take a few minutes just to fill out the survey. Thanks, and have a great day. It is Ross at Color, the Canadian Color, .ca.